It's dark outside and the mysterious skies above. I'm here, not exactly live, but neither deceased, from the Alan I. Carswell Observatory at York University. Our TeleTube broadcasts occur every Wednesday at 7:30, but this is the only one that's haunted. Tonight, we have a special late night Halloween broadcast. But before we get started, don't be scared and think we're too kooky. Our crew tonight is just quite spooky. Welcome, everyone. I'm Haunted Dr. Hyde, not to be confused with Mr. Jekyll. I sometimes chide, but never heckle.
I'm Guggan, the graveyard ghost. The spookiest cemeteries are where I haunt the most, especially on the coldest, darkest nights when the moon glows and the stars shine bright.
I'm Otherworldly Obada. On my planet, everyone is psychic, but you'll soon find that nobody's psychic.
I'm Amin Jack O'Lantern Jafarov, and I glow like a star. You may also find that I'm quite bizarre.
Dr. Hyde was working in the lab late one night when her eyes beheld an eerie sight. Out of the dome, for her surprise, a haunting figure began to rise. It's monster mad.
Don't be scared of our Halloween crew. Our only dissections are of the light into bars. And for once in a while, of course, we organize the stars. Now, as we get started, just a reminder for all of those of you who are alive over in the chat for our broadcast, you can ask us any questions, astronomy or otherwise, about these spooky objects and stories as we go. We'll answer as many of them as we can. Now, to settle in for our first tale, pull up a chair and wrap yourself warm. It's time for a bit of spooky history about astronomy and the mysterious holiday of Halloween. Our first tale stretches back through the ages, all the way towards the origins of Halloween itself, into ancient times and ancient skies. But I have to say, one thing we always try to do at the Alan I. Carswell Observatory is to involve our telescope looking at the skies whenever possible. This, of course, requires a little bit of help from some friendly ghosts. We have at the telescope right now, in fact, two ghostly entities which will move the telescope for us. So a little bit of a shout out, of course, a ghost shout out to Quentin and Anna, the friendly spirits who are going to help us move the 1 meter telescope so that you can all see. Now we're starting off with our first object. I'm just going to pull across with ghostly powers here over to the 1 meter telescope. And what do we have for our keen ghostly eyes? Well, it looks like our first wonderful object out in space. What could this be? Well, of course, you in chat might take a guess. What glows red and is unlike the rest? Any guesses? Maybe one of our ghosts would like to give a try. All right, let's see here. Let's go over to our image viewer and see if the ghosts of the telescope can help us move around just a little bit. And we'll head over to the telescope's star chart. Aha! We can see now where our ghosts are pointed at. Ah, Chalissa says it is the planet Mars. You are quite correct. Mars, one of the spookiest objects in the night sky. Let's go ahead and go back to our live views. All right. Otherworldly Obada,
Yes.
would you care to say a few words about this other world?
Yes, Mars is the closest planet to Earth, and it is half the size. It's currently abandoned and probably the most spooky planet right now. There was probably life in ancient times, so that's why it might be a haunted planet.
Indeed, and we might hear more about that when we get to our ghost stories later. So, of course, we're lucky to have Otherworldly Obada here with us, our expert, of course, on other worlds. Gagan the Graveyard Ghost, I believe you're also here with us.
Hello. I think I have a fun fact about Mars we can share tonight. My friendly ghosts at the observatory tell me that Mars right now is 67 million kilometers away from the Earth.
67 million. That is quite the distance. Of course, it does get substantially farther away in its orbit. Some of you might remember we had our closest approach to Mars not too long ago on this very YouTube channel.
Indeed, and the spacecraft that we sent to Mars are going to be arriving there early in the upcoming year.
Indeed, those spacecraft will certainly have to watch out for any ghosts that it might be around. You can see that the atmosphere is causing this image of Mars to appear even more mysterious tonight. The image fluctuating and jumping around. This does provide quite a mysterious view. This jumping is actually not due to sprites or gremlins, as you might think, but it is in fact the atmosphere of our own planet Earth getting in the way. All right, Amin Jack O'Lantern Jafarov, I believe you're here with us as well.
Yes, hello.
Why don't you tell us a little bit of a tiny taste about these ghosts of Mars that we might have?
Um, yes, Mars could have been the host to microbial life billions of years ago, before, where they had an atmosphere, an ozone layer, and a magnetic field. But eventually, it lost its atmosphere, and radiation must have killed all the life on the surface since then.
Ooh, that is indeed a good taste. I can't wait to get to the ghost stories portion of tonight's TeleTube, where you can tell us all about that. Now, I'll just go ahead and point out some strange shadowy features on the surface of Mars that you can see right now. Those features are called albedo regions, and you can see the darker patches would be our dark albedo regions, the lighter patches would be our light albedo regions, and as Mars rotates, we can actually see different features on its surface. Now let's see what other kind of spooky objects in the sky we can get to tonight. I believe the moon is also quite fabulous. Maybe we can travel all the way from Mars to the moon in one go. Let's ask our friendly ghosts, Anna and Quentin, over at the telescope now to see if we can move there. As they are operating the telescope, we will lose our view of the planet Mars. So I hope you aren't getting too attached. We'll have to zoom away across the sky over to a lovely moon. And we'll actually talk a little bit more about the moon at the end of the night because Halloween this year is a very special time for the moon. Just coming into view now, our ghosts have done it again. And thankfully, these are definitely one of the most helpful ghosts that we have. As you might say, the best poltergeists around are at the AICO Observatory. You can see what we're changing the intensity levels to try to bring out a little bit more of the moon. Our 1 meter telescope is very, very good at getting high detail off of the craters and features on the moon.
And interestingly, we just discovered water on one of the sunlit surfaces of the moon a few days ago, which was super exciting.
Indeed. Water everywhere, as they say. Now, as a haunted Dr. Hyde, of course, I probably don't even need water. And as a graveyard ghost, you might not either. But any astronauts on the surface of the moon would definitely like to have some water.
Oh, I'd definitely like to maybe see if there are some moon aliens that we have.
Ghosts on the moon, it's not that far out an idea. So far, of course, everybody who has landed on the moon has come back, fortunately.
Thank goodness.
Thank goodness. But, eventually, if we start building cities there, ghosts could, of course, settle in as well. And water is a big part of any kind of city. As we are here in Toronto, of course, we need water every winter to make all of those ice skating rinks all over town. There
So
was some talk
actually,
as, oh yes, go ahead.
about cities on the moon, NASA's is planning to build a 4G network on the moon. So hopefully, us ghosts can have some fast Wi-Fi up there.
Indeed. And it would be absolutely fabulous. Of course, you've got your ice skating rink, you've got your Wi-Fi. What more do you really need?
And you can play basketball pretty easily. So
Oh, that is quite correct. Not everyone can just float where they want to go. We're all bound by gravity, but if you're on the moon, there is a bit less of it. So you actually would be, whoever you are, wherever you are, whatever your native basketball skills, they would be better on the moon. Excellent. And you can see our helpful poltergeists are now sort of shifting us around to different areas of the moon. And we're getting a little bit of fluctuation due to the atmosphere again. It's not really completely haunted, but as Graveyard Gagan might tell you later, there is a possibility that there might be some sort of haunting going on. Okay, now let's go ahead and see what else our friendly poltergeists can dig up for us. We are looking for spooky objects, of course, to take you to in the night sky tonight. Maybe we can go out away from the moon a bit.
Yeah, we've got lots of planets up in the night sky right now, so we might be able to get a couple good ones.
Indeed, I think this is how we landed Otherworldly Obada in this show tonight, is because we had so many other worlds available. He just had to stop by.
Cleared up his
yes,
availability
Earth is
just
kind
for
of
tonight.
my pit stop.
Excellent. Oh, look, our poltergeists are at it again. Here we go. Our 1 meter telescope is moving all by itself. Look at that. They have selected the target of Neptune. Now, Neptune is much farther than the moon and also much, much farther than Mars. Being in the cold, icy outer reaches of the solar system, of course, Neptune, despite being a very big planet, is in fact quite hard to see. From Earth right now, it has a beautiful ghostly glow, which we're just pulling up now thanks to our poltergeists. What a wonderful haunted object this is. The lovely planet Neptune, out in those cold depths of space, past the moon, past Mars, past Jupiter, out where things are really, really quite beyond icy. Not quite as far as Pluto, mind you, but given the size of Neptune that it appears so small and dim, it is quite a incredible distance that it is. And it has a lovely haunted glowing light. As a haunted greenish blue object myself, I have to say I really approve of this planet.
Oh, that's an eerie looking one.
It is indeed quite eerie.
Neptune actually has 6 faint rings.
Ooh, that is extra haunted. I don't know if I can see the rings in this image, though. Maybe if we were able to launch our telescope over to the moon, once they have the ice skating rinks and the Wi-Fi established, we would be able to make out the rings of Neptune.
Neptune's also the coldest and the windiest planet in the solar system, which makes for some pretty spooky sounds.
Indeed, the spooky sounds of Neptune would be quite something to catch on audio. I don't know if they've ever done any audio recording of Neptune, but I imagine it might sound a little bit eerie and a little bit echoey.
I believe NASA does have some audio recordings of, different spooky things in the universe. They actually released one, like a compilation of them today. I'll see if I can, I don't know, can Ghost log on to Twitter? Because if I can, I will make sure to send that out for everyone.
Excellent. That should be a fabulous solution. So we'll see if we can get some of our ghostly social media crew to help out with that as well, and maybe put some of these links up onto Twitter later after the broadcast tonight. All right, our icy outer solar system neighbor Neptune. It is not a well explored planet. It has had very, very few missions, actually, and only one really good flyby. So, unlike the moon and unlike Mars, which has had many, many, many missions flown to it, and we really think we understand at least what's going on at the surface, Neptune remains a bit of a mystery and not anywhere near as explored as it probably ought to be, given its lovely blue color. It is also, just to add to its mystery, the densest giant planet. So it is about 17 times more mass than Earth, slightly more massive than the planet Uranus, which is quite close in size to Neptune. But it is so cold and dense and far away. It really operates in a very, very different regime than ghosts or life on Earth can imagine.
In fact, a year on Neptune lasts 165 Earth years.
Indeed, a year on Neptune is quite a bit longer. And the other thing that we can't quite make out from here, but NASA was able to tell at the Voyager 2 flyby, is it looks like Neptune is kind of a hazy blue mysterious blob from here. But if you could get close enough, you would see that there are storms on Neptune. You might have heard of the Great Red Spot of Jupiter. Well, Neptune also has a gigantic storm and active visible weather patterns. So hopefully we get some more time to explore this mysterious object soon. All right, it looks like our ghosts have helped us out quite a bit tonight, viewing some haunted objects over at the telescope. And of course, you'd also know what is up tonight. So if you go outside, you can easily see Mars and the moon up in the sky right now. And if you've got a pretty good sized telescope, you might just be able to make out the faint signature of Neptune as well. Alrighty, so let's go ahead and get started with some of our ghost stories for tonight, and I will let our gremlins and our handy sprites over at the telescope. I'll let them have the telescope back for now. All right, getting started again with another fun little ghost story, as it were. We're going to talk a little bit about the origins of Halloween and why it is, in fact, as I say, the perfect astronomy holiday. There are many spooky objects in the sky, but the very origins of the holiday of Halloween actually come from astronomy. All right, now how do we get this started? Well, why Halloween? And what we'll have to do to tell this tale properly is go ahead and take some time. In fact, we'll be going back in time thousands of years into ancient times, ancient skies, and we'll start off by asking, what is Halloween and why is it so spooky? And how is it, really the perfect astronomy holiday? Or is it just one that, astronomers in Canada really like? So if we go back to a time before when stars were clearer to see, there was a day that used to be referred to as All Hallows Eve. As you'll see in this slightly long tale, certain stars will appear on the night, aligning as it does with cold winter's onset. It became associated with fright. So Halloween is a contraction of this ancient holiday of All Hallows Evening or All Hallows Eve. So if you say it kind of fast, you can get back your word of Halloween. It was dedicated to remembering the dead, including saints and martyrs and all kinds of faithful departed. And All Hallows Eve or the Feast of All Hallows Day isn't as far back as we need to go. Actually, before we even had All Hallows Eve, there was a holiday before that called Samhain. And we'll go back in maybe steps of about 1,000 years or so. It doesn't make such a difference to us haunted folks, but for humans, it was a long, long time ago. And about 1,000 years ago, we had All Souls Day on November 2nd, which was declared as a public holiday. This Celtic festival of Samhain occurred about the same time. And so the idea was a little bit of we're going to use this holiday, but make it our own. And, make it more of I believe, a European church holiday as well. So All Saints' Day celebration was at that time still associated with what we now know as All Hallows Eve, All Halloween, and sometimes called All Hallowmas. The whole thing became a great big celebration, and the traditional night of Samhain in the Celtic religion of Europe sort of evolved and became known as All Hallows Eve. Now, at this time, they were still carving jack-o'-lanterns, but they were not using pumpkins. So we have included a particularly spooky picture of a turnip jack-o'-lantern. So if you're really trying to scare your neighbors this Halloween, maybe don't use the pumpkins, but pick a couple turnips up instead. So as we say, we have to go back even further. Further than 1,000 years, keep rewinding in time. The holiday of Samhain existed in Europe and in Celtic Gaelic culture, which originated in Ireland. It was meant to mark the time of year. Now, the thing that makes this the perfect astronomy holiday is how do you mark the time of year? Well, of course, you can use the stars. So, as we go back through the ages, people didn't have smartphones, they didn't have digital calendars. We used the stars and the planets and the alignments to tell our sense of time and to tell when the seasons were about to change. So the Samhain holiday would mark the beginning of winter with what was called cross quarter days, and it was generally celebrated in what we now call the 31 October to 1 November range. This is going back through the ages a very important date because if you mark your beginning of winter, you know that you really have to have everything prepared for those long winter nights and that cold, cold season. It was thought to be a time when spirits or fairies could come into the world, and maybe the souls of the dead might visit their homes. Feasts, of course, could happen. So the idea of Halloween candy and eating too much of it, shall we say, that would not have necessarily been a new idea. They wouldn't have had modern candy, but they might have still eaten a bit too much of it. Now, feasts and celebrations to which the souls of the dead could attend were something that we have carried through a little bit into our modern versions of Halloween. People going door to door in costume and giving verses in exchange for food. Well, nowadays we mostly say trick or treat, but don't think it would go terribly amiss if you wanted to use a rhyme as well. So, which stars were used to mark this day, and why are they extra spooky? So, we'll go ahead. Sorry, excuse me. Not getting too aside. The stars of Halloween are, in fact, the Pleiades, which will be rising quite late tonight, so we won't be able to show you what they look like through the telescope. But if you are staying up late, they will be absolutely fabulous to see. This image shows a disk found from about 3,600 years ago. So we've gone from talking about 1,000-ish years ago to 3,600, almost 4,000 years ago. An incredible amount of time. And it's showing the Pleiades in the sky. Those dots are the dots of the stars of the Pleiades. This is one of the oldest known representations in Europe of the Pleiades. And it is a fabulous, fabulous view. So the Pleiades would align in winter up in the sky, and that would be marked by, of course, the Celts and other cultures at the time. So there's a lot of myths that we're not going to be able to cover, but the calendrical and the physical importance of this object is not to be understated. So the Celts of the Bronze Age, about 4,000 years ago, were using these stars. When they reached their highest point, that would mark the start of the winter season. And it was also thought that this would kind of, or at least the legend has it, that it was thought that this was kind of a bridge between the living world and the deceased. So what does the Pleiades really look like? Well, this is the actual astronomical object. If you look up in the sky, you will see a very, very bright blue cluster of stars very close together. The Pleiades are somewhat unusual because we can actually see these separate stars, and they are really next to each other. As we look out into space, all the stars we see in the night sky form constellations, and it looks to us like groups, but they could be anywhere in space. So the Pleiades are really something special. It's a group of stars that look close together, and they really, really are. So the Pleiades, sometimes called the Seven Sisters, if you can see all seven of them, you have very good eyesight. And the Pleiades contains about 3,000 stars. It's about 400 light years away, so we're seeing these ghostly blue stars as they were about 400 years ago. It is a bright, what we call reflection nebula, which makes it a very shocking standout object. Really something that is, as you could see, maybe a great thing to mark. And when it reaches its highest point in the sky, that would be a really interesting event. So the fact that that lines up with the Celtic start of winter, or their cross-quarter holiday, that's pretty cool. I could see why they would want to mark that. So there are a couple little things about the stars as we're going through tonight, just so that everybody knows a little bit what's happening. The stars, of course, are located out in space, but we always view them from Earth. And since we view them from Earth, we lose all sense of distance, as it were. We can't really tell just exactly how far away they are. They are appearing to be, shall we say, on a celestial sphere. And this kind of behavior means that we don't see them moving, as it were. The stars are somewhat fixed. Earth, however, it does spin around every day. And because the Earth spins, the stars appear to move from east to west. And we can map that out. The stars of the Pleiades being one of those, they will also appear to spin across the sky. And as we go through the seasons, their position will change. So just to show you a little bit about where the Pleiades are in the sky, we can look at them on sky maps, and we'll have a little bit of that at the end of the show tonight as well. But the Pleiades are really interesting in another way, in the sense that they actually have very significant seasonal alignments across the northern and the southern hemispheres, because they're close enough to the equator. So as we go around on our planet, around the sun, we have, of course, the seasons of Earth. And the seasons of Earth being mapped out in the stars means that as we travel, those stars appear in slightly different positions due to our Earth's tilt. So we have our longest days and our shortest days. Going into winter, we'll have our shortest days and, of course, our longest nights. And that will align with what we call the solstices. So if we have a shortest day and a longest day every year, there must be a point in between. And there are two. Those are the equinoxes, and those will fall along, as you can see kind of here in this plot. We have our equinoxes and our solstices, and the Pleiades will actually help to mark those. And that's exactly what was happening in this ghost story. The Bronze Age Celts were marking the same stars that you can see in the sky tonight. Of course, the position will be just a little bit different. The Pleiades are close to what we call the ecliptic, and that means that they're often near lots and lots of interesting things. So if you look up tonight and notice the Pleiades, we'll try to call out some interesting objects that they're close to when we get to the star map later on in the broadcast. Now, we're not going to go into great detail on the rise and the set times of the Pleiades themselves, but there's another spooky astronomical fact that you all need to be aware of, and that is over thousands of years and tens of thousands of years, the position of Earth's axis does change. And this is due to a bit of a wobble in our axis as we go around. And it's not something you and I or our ancestors or our great ancestors would ever notice. But over tens of thousands of years, it becomes apparent. And so when you go back all the way to the ancient Celts 4,000 years ago, certain alignments do shift. And this is called the precession of the equinoxes. So this means that the North Pole star that we have now would not have been the North Pole star tens of thousands of years ago. And in tens of thousands of years in the future, it will also not be the North Pole star. It will, in fact, wobble around a little bit. So the North Pole star changes. This means our alignments will change with other constellations as well, including, of course, the Pleiades and the ecliptic that we mentioned before. So constellations aren't going to really change over even tens of thousands of years unless you have some very fast moving stars, which we're not going to talk about at the moment. But um, the alignments will change. The equinox alignments will change. Where the stars are on particular dates will change. So we are not going to see the Pleiades directly overhead on Halloween at midnight. We are going to see the Pleiades, but they'll be a bit lower in the sky. So we're dealing with thousands of years and mysterious motions in the sky, and of course, we have the alignment of the Pleiades originating the holiday of Halloween itself. So, in the age of the Celts, and I might be pronouncing that wrong, so apologies. But we had our alignment with the Pleiades directly overhead, signaling the start of winter around this time. Now we will see that the alignments have shifted, but the Pleiades are still very, very spooky. The Pleiades clusters rising in the east as the sun's light fades in the evening will continue to remind us of Halloween. And hopefully, Halloween will now continue to remind you all a little bit of astronomy. So, we're going to do a couple little ghost stories tonight to round off of our evening. And we have a few spooky tales assorted by our crew. Next up on our spooky TeleTube are some interesting tales, and of course, we're not to start off, not to do too many spoilers, but these are some of the best ghost stories I've ever seen. The first one up is a murky story from the Monster Mat.
You want to hear a spooky story I heard? Well, I have many tales to tell. Some will even make you lose your head. But there's one in a specific which I'm reminded of in this long dark night. One that will surely get you scared. I was once asked by a little boy, "Sir, do you believe in ghosts?" "Oh, yes, of course I do." I said, "I'm a man of science, but time will tell you too that ghosts are real, big, bright, and blue." It was a long time ago, back when the night wasn't polluted with the city lights. I was walking through the dense forest when my eyes came upon an eerie sight. It was a light in the middle of those dark tall trees, an inexplicable light coming from the pitch black sky. "Who's there?" I fearfully mumbled. No one replied. "Who's there?" I kept on asking till I had to hide. My heart was beating fast. I didn't understand why, but there was this spine-chilling glow that didn't want to leave my side. The wind was blowing fast, although there was no storm nearby. More of them appeared on that young dark night. I began to ask myself, what is this thing from what I'm trying to hide? Is it just me, or am I losing my mind? Maybe that's why Dr. Hyde told me to leave the observatory on that now big bright sky. I decided to go back as fast as I could, like somebody running from a monster would. "What is it?" Dr. Hyde asked after I knocked at the door. Meanwhile, those lights became brighter than ever before. "Hurry, let me in," I said, as the mist from the forest engulfed the trees ahead. There were these lights appearing in the sky, coming out of nowhere, like spectral figures materializing in the blink of an eye. "I'm afraid you're right," she said. "What you saw is the remnant of what once was alive, but by the time you saw it arrive, it is nothing more than a memory painted on the long dark night. And it will stay there, maybe even longer than you and I probably will. Even though it died a long time ago, its light still lives and thrives, dancing as the night comes by. It's not hard to explain," she said. "Everything's just a matter of time. You see, the sky allows us to look even further than what it may seem, so far that we don't only travel in distance but also time. But there's no need to be afraid because to astronomers like you and me, the stars mean company on the cold dark nights. We're not alone anymore. In fact, there's a whole universe dead and alive, waiting for us to rise and shine. And maybe one day, someone else looking from afar will look at us while asking why that bright blue spot isn't actually there anymore. So, yes, I believe in ghosts. Will this story make you believe in them too? I see you're not frightened enough. Well, I'm sure that'll go away in a cough once you listen to Amin Jack O'Lantern Jafarov and his tale, which will make your courage spook off.
Far, far away, across the cold reaches of space, there's a deserted wasteland called Mars. It is a very lonely place. No human has ever been there, but a few solitary robots roam the surface. The atmosphere is very thin, less than 1% the density of that of Earth's, in fact. It would be difficult to draw breath if you were there. Intense radiation and temperature swings batter the surface. You would not be able to survive for any extended period of time. Long, long ago, however, Mars was much wetter and warmer. This is because it used to have a magnetic field that protected it from the solar wind, a stream of particles emitted by the sun that can strip away unprotected atmospheres. Perhaps there were even life forms once, and some sort of ecosystem could have existed. Eventually, Mars's core solidified, and it then lost its magnetic field, which the rotating core used to generate. The protection from the sun was gone, and it became the desolate landscape it is today. Its atmosphere was slowly eroded away, and the potential ecosystem would have been extinguished. Any life that Mars could have supported before must surely have disappeared now. Their ghosts must be haunting the surface of the planet to this day. And now a tale from Otherworldly Obada to haunt your evening.
I've got a few more scary stories for you. In distant reaches of the Milky Way, deep in the night sky, 900 light years away, there lives a witch in the reflection of a star. The Witchhead Nebula, shown on the right, is a reflection nebula made of a massive dark cloud of interstellar gas. It is named for a striking resemblance to a witch's head. The center right of the nebula in the image, you can almost make out a witch's nose and chin. The blue-purple radiance given off by the nebula represents the scary steam given off from the witch's brewing cauldron. It is illuminated by a nearby star in the Orion constellation named Rigel. The Witchhead Nebula is otherwise a faint and spooky cosmic object. In another part of the sky, a ghost haunts the cold, dark universe. The Ghost Nebula is another reflection nebula. It's named because its appearance represents that of a ghost, wandering the sky near the Cepheus constellation. The nebula spans around 2 light years across. Most nebulae are gaseous remnants of dead and destroyed stars, and are star-forming locations. Inside the Ghost Nebula, multiple stars were able to form, making the nebula glow a faint brown color through its clouds, giving its haunted and spooky appearance. And now, Gagan the Graveyard Ghost will make your hair turn gray with a tale of our very own observatory.
Wow, those are some awesome spooky space stories. Did you know that our very own observatory could be haunted as well? I'm not the only ghost that lurks around the domes. Our 60 centimeter telescope, which was built in 1968 in Boston, Massachusetts, was moved into our dome in 1969, over 50 years ago. Since then, our observatory domes have been reportedly haunted, with creaks and odd noises heard throughout the cold, dark nights. At times, a sudden chill floods our control room. Some students and researchers have even said that someone or something takes control of their computers to correct some of their work or to browse the internet for astronomy research. Well, we did some digging to see what this could possibly be, and we may have stumbled upon a supernatural explanation. Legend has it that one of the researchers who helped build our 60 centimeter telescope in Boston grew so attached to it during its construction and testing that they were distraught when it had to be moved to Toronto. They were heartbroken for the rest of their lives, and when they passed away, their spirit decided to follow the telescope and stay with it as they had always wanted. Some say that this spirit still wanders around our observatory to this day and in rare moments offers help to our researchers and astronomers. Will this spirit stick around forever? Well, the 60 centimeter telescope isn't going anywhere anytime soon, so who knows? We'll keep our eyes peeled for any more ghost sightings in our domes. In the meantime, Haunted Dr. Hyde is back to talk about the night sky tonight and on Halloween. What can we see in the witching hour?
Indeed. Thanks very much to our graveyard ghost Gagan, Amin Jack O'Lantern Jafarov, and Otherworldly Obada, and of course the Monster Mat for those spooky space stories. The strange tales of our ghastly crew tonight, of course, are not the end of the story. You can, in fact, see some of these haunted objects up in the sky right now. So, if watching Mars live through the 1 meter telescope wasn't enough of a spooky view, you can go outside and look uppity towards the east. The ghosts of Mars are rising red, just a bit away from a conspicuously full moon. To the west, you'll have Jupiter and Saturn sinking into the murky depths just after the sun. But what about if we go forward just a couple days to October 31st itself? If you manage to stay up until midnight, this is the sky that you will see in Toronto. You will see the Pleiades still visible on Halloween, but not at its highest point, as we discussed before. Um, Shown in this dark sky scene, we have mysterious Mars high in the sky. And if you're in a cold climate like Toronto, the moon may hold even stranger plans. If it is cold enough and there's water in the atmosphere, we can get a spooky lunar halo, which is absolutely fabulous here in Toronto. It occurs when there are clouds of ice in the upper atmosphere that refract the light of the moon. They can be easily seen as an spectacular iridescent ring. You will not miss it if it occurs. The most unusual to see is a single halo, one of 22 degrees, but sometimes you can also see concentric ones too. It's not possible to predict when a halo will appear, but of course we can always try to ask the spirits to help us get to one. This makes them extra mysterious. The Pleiades are lurking just around the moon, so if you see a fabulous moon at midnight on Halloween, definitely look around for those astronomy stars of the Pleiades as well, our true Halloween stars. And spare a moment to think of those ancient astronomers thousands of years ago who used the light from those stars to mark the start of winter. So, of course, we wouldn't be at all complete without telling you one final object. This Halloween is the Halloween feature, or sort of the moon event feature of the entire year. So, it's not just a special night for the Pleiades. Halloween night has a fabulous, rare blue full moon on October 31st, Halloween night, a special treat for Canadians and I suppose the rest of North America too. This is the first time that we have had a full moon, a blue full moon, on Halloween night for decades. As they say, it only happens once in a blue moon. Well, this is even more rare than that because it has to be on Halloween. Every month we'll have a full moon, but a blue moon, just so you know, it is the second full moon of a month, just possible in October as with our 31 days. So the Halloween blue moon is that second full moon of the month. It might be a little bit bluish if it's low enough on the horizon, but it certainly won't have a bright blue color, unfortunately. As per the Old Farmer's Almanac, the Halloween Hunter's Blue Moon will turn completely full at 10:49 a.m. ET on October 31st. So it really is a fabulous moon event. Usually, as we say, they only have one full moon. Full moons are generally separated by approximately 29 days or so, while most months are 30 or 31 days long. So it is just possible. And October has done it this year. The next 100% illuminated Halloween full moon will not occur until the year 2039. So you might want to take advantage of this year's rare photo op and, as they say, literal once in a blue moon. Just so you know, this is even more sort of unusual, the last time a full moon was seen across all North American time zones like this on Halloween was all the way back in 1944. So if you go by rarity being extra spooky, the next time we'll see an equally spooky blue moon is decades away. So plan your werewolf costumes accordingly. All right, thank you everyone. We're going to go ahead and wrap up, but as always, we will be available in our spooky chat as ghosts to answer any questions you may have. You have indeed been listening to the ghosts, ghouls, and associated creatures of the Alan I. Carswell Observatory, presenting this Haunted Wednesday TeleTube broadcast. The Gremlins have asked us to pass on to you that these astronomy and astrophysics programs are in fact written and presented by the students, faculty, alumni, and friends of York University. The hosts this evening have been myself, the haunted Dr. Hyde, graveyard ghost Gagan, Amin Jack O'Lantern Jafarov, Otherworldly Obada, and the monster Matt. You can always make sure to leave any questions or comments in the comment section of this video, and you can connect with us on Twitter and Instagram at the handle at York Observatory and Facebook at Alan I. Carswell Obs. All of our programs are free, but if you would like to make a donation, you can see our website at observatory.info.yorku.ca. Thanks for tuning in, clear skies, and have a very spooky night. We'll be available in chat for about the next 10 minutes for questions.